March 17, 1932, Chicago. At exactly 8:47 p.m., three men from the North Side Gang entered the basement of a six-story apartment building on South Halsted Street. They carried a large canvas bag and moved quickly, their faces covered with scarves. The building, they believed, housed one of Al Capone's illegal operations on the top floor. Their plan was simple and brutal. Plant a bomb in the basement with a 10-minute timer, call in a warning to clear Capone's men from the top floor, and destroy his operation. What they didn't know was that the building wasn't a Capone operation at all. It was just an apartment building where 212 ordinary people lived. Families, children, elderly residents, none of them connected to organized crime in any way. The North Side Gang had targeted the wrong building. At 8:52 p.m., they activated the bomb and left. The timer was set for 10 minutes. At 9:02 p.m., the bomb would explode with enough force to collapse the entire building. At 8:58 p.m., 4 minutes before detonation, one of the bombers realized their mistake and called Capone's headquarters in a panic. At 8:59 p.m., Al Capone learned that 200 innocent people had 5 minutes to live. The police bomb squad was 20 minutes away. Capone's office was 12 blocks from the building, and somewhere in that building's basement, a timer was counting down. 600 seconds. What happened next would never make the newspapers. Nobody would ever know Capone was there. But in those final minutes, Chicago's most feared criminal became the only thing standing between 200 people and certain death. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because in upcoming episodes, we'll be telling other extraordinary stories about split-second decisions that changed everything. The mistake, wrong place, wrong target, the rivalry between Al Capone's South Side organization and the North Side Gang had been violent for years. After the St. Valentine's Day massacre in 1929, where Capone's men killed 7 North Side Gang members, the survivors wanted revenge. By 1932, leadership of the North Side Gang had passed to men who were younger, angrier, and less strategic than their predecessors. They wanted to hurt Capone, to destroy something he valued, to make him feel the pain they had felt. Intelligence reached them in early March that Capone was running a new operation out of a building on South Halsted Street, a 6-story structure that allegedly housed a major alcohol distribution center on the top floor. The intelligence was wrong, based on outdated information and misidentification, but the North Side Gang believed it was accurate. 3 members of the gang volunteered for the bombing mission: Tommy O'Brien, Jack Hendricks, and a demolitions expert they knew only as the Swede. The Swede was a former coal miner who had experience with dynamite and had built bombs for various criminal operations in the past. He constructed the device over 3 days, using 20 sticks of dynamite, a clockwork timer salvaged from an alarm clock, and a blasting cap. The bomb was crude but powerful enough to demolish a building's foundation. The plan was to place it in the basement, set the timer for 10 minutes, then call a warning to Capone's top-floor operation. The warning would give Capone's men time to evacuate, but not enough time to defuse the bomb. The building would be destroyed, Capone would lose his operation and his investment, and the North Side Gang would have their revenge. At least, that was the plan. The 3 men entered the building's basement through an unlocked service entrance at 8:47 p.m. on March 17th. The basement was dark, filled with storage units, water heaters, and the building's coal furnace. They found a spot near the main support column, a thick concrete pillar that held up much of the building's weight. The Swede placed the bomb against the column, connected the wires, and set the timer. At 8:52 p.m., he twisted the timer's key and the clockwork mechanism began ticking. 10 minutes. The 3 men left quickly, climbed back out the service entrance, got into their car, and drove away. They were 3 blocks away when Tommy O'Brien, who had been studying a Chicago map, suddenly realized something terrible. He had been double-checking their route and looked again at the building's address. And then he looked at the intelligence report they had received. The numbers didn't match. They had bombed 3247 South Halsted. The intelligence report said Capone's operation was at 3427 South Halsted. They had hit the wrong building. O'Brien's face went white, he told the others. The Swede cursed and checked his watch. It was 8:55 p.m., 7 minutes until detonation. They had just planted a massive bomb in a residential building full of innocent people. The North Side Gang were criminals, but they weren't murderers of random civilians. They had a code, twisted as it might be. O'Brien made a split-second decision. He told the driver to find a payphone. At 8:57 p.m., they found one and O'Brien jumped out. But who should he call? The police? That would mean admitting to planting a bomb, which meant arrest and prison. But if he didn't call someone, 200 people would die. O'Brien stood at that payphone, paralyzed by indecision, watching the seconds tick away. And then he thought of something desperate, something crazy. He would call Capone. Capone had the resources, the manpower, and most importantly, he was close to the building. If anyone could do something in the 5 minutes that remained, it was Capone. The call, 5 minutes to disaster at 8:58 p.m. The phone rang at the Lexington Hotel, Capone's headquarters. The switchboard operator answered and heard a frantic voice. "I need to talk to Capone right now. It's an emergency. Life or death." The operator normally would have dismissed this as a crank call, but something in the caller's voice, the genuine panic, made her transfer the call to Capone's office. Frank Nitti answered. The caller identified himself only as someone who made a terrible mistake, and then explained in rapid sentences, "Bomb in basement, 3247 South Halsted, residential building, 10-minute timer, 3 minutes left, wrong target, innocent people." Nitti's first instinct was that this was a trap, a trick to lure Capone somewhere for an ambush. But the caller was crying now, begging them to believe him, saying that families were about to die because of his mistake. Nitti made a judgment call. He believed the caller. He ran into Capone's private office where Capone was having dinner with 2 of his lawyers. "Boss, we got a problem. There's a bomb. Apartment building. 3 minutes. Capone stood up immediately. "Where?" Nitti gave him the address. Capone knew that building, knew that neighborhood. He knew it was residential, mostly Italian immigrant families, the kind of people who lived in the same buildings he had grown up in. And he knew something else, something that made this possible to fix. His tunnel system had an exit 2 buildings away from 3247 South Halsted. Capone checked his watch. 8:59 p.m., 3 minutes. He grabbed his coat and ran. Capone, Nitti, and 3 other men sprinted through the Lexington Hotel to the basement level where one of the tunnel entrances was located. They had flashlights, but no bomb disposal equipment, no expertise, nothing but their bare hands and 3 minutes. As they descended into the tunnel, Capone was doing calculations in his head. The tunnel from the Lexington to South Halsted was about 8 blocks, maybe half a mile through the underground passages. They had run this route before during bootlegging operations, and it typically took about 8 minutes at a normal pace. They had 3 minutes. They would have to sprint through tunnels that were narrow, dark, and had low ceilings. And even if they made it in time, Capone had no idea how to defuse a bomb, but he ran anyway, because the alternative was doing nothing while 200 people died. The 5 men ran through the tunnels like their lives depended on it. The flashlight beams bounced crazily off brick walls. They had to duck under support beams, jump over debris, navigate turns in near darkness. Nitti was carrying a crowbar in case they needed to break through any barriers. One of the other men was carrying a fire axe for the same reason. Capone led the way, his breath coming in ragged gasps, his expensive suit getting covered in tunnel dirt, his mind focused on only one thing: get there, find the bomb, do something, anything. At 9:00 p.m., they were halfway there. At 9:01 p.m., they reached the exit that would put them near 3247 South Halsted. They climbed the metal ladder that led from the tunnel to a basement access hatch in a building 2 doors down from the target. Capone threw open the hatch and climbed out. 1 minute left. The race. 60 seconds, Capone and his men emerged from the basement of 3245 South Halsted and ran into the street. It was a cold March night, and the street was nearly empty, except for a few people walking home from work. Capone ignored them and ran to the neighboring building, 3247. The building's main door was locked. Nitti didn't hesitate. He swung the crowbar at the door's glass window, shattering it, then reached through and unlocked the door from the inside. They rushed into the building's lobby. An elderly woman standing near the mailboxes screamed at the sight of 5 men in suits breaking in. Capone shouted at her, "Where's the basement?" "Where are the stairs?" The woman, terrified, pointed to a door at the end of the hall. Capone ran to it, threw it open, and found concrete stairs leading down into darkness. The basement was pitch black. Capone's flashlight cut through the darkness as he descended the stairs, the others right behind him. The basement was large, maybe 60 feet by 40 feet, filled with storage units and equipment. Where was the bomb? They started searching frantically, throwing open storage unit doors, checking behind the furnace, looking everywhere. 30 seconds left. Capone's heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his temples. And then Nitti shouted, "Here! I found it!" Capone ran to where Nitti was standing, near a thick concrete support column. And there it was, a canvas bag with wires leading out of it, connected to what looked like an alarm clock mechanism. The clock face showed the time, 9:01 and 40 seconds. 20 seconds left. Capone knelt down beside the bomb and examined it by flashlight. He had never defused a bomb in his life, had no training, no knowledge of explosives. But he could see the basic mechanism. The clock was wired to a blasting cap, which was inserted into the dynamite. When the clock's alarm hand reached the designated time, it would complete an electrical circuit, triggering the blasting cap, which would detonate the dynamite. Simple, crude, but effective. 15 seconds. Capone's hands were shaking. He could see 2 wires leading from the clock to the blasting cap. One red, one black. He had heard that you were supposed to cut one of the wires to break the circuit, but which one? Cut the wrong wire and the bomb might explode immediately. Cut the right wire and it would be disarmed. He had no way of knowing which was which. 10 seconds. Capone made a decision. He pulled out his pocket knife, a small folding knife he carried for cutting cigars, and opened the blade. His hands were trembling so badly he could barely hold it. He had to choose, red wire or black wire. There was no time to think, no time to analyze. He chose the red wire. He positioned the knife blade against the wire. 5 seconds. He took a breath. 4 seconds. He pressed the blade down.
3 seconds.
The wire resisted for a moment. 2 seconds. He pressed harder and the wire severed. 1 second. The bomb didn't explode. Capone stared at it, waiting for the blast that would kill him. Nothing happened. The clock ticked to 9:02, and the alarm mechanism clicked as it tried to complete the circuit, but the severed wire prevented it. The bomb was dead. The aftermath. The secret Capone sat back on his heels, still staring at the bomb, his entire body shaking from adrenaline. He had just cut a wire blind, a 50-50 guess, and somehow chosen correctly. If he had cut the black wire instead, he would be dead right now, and so would everyone else in the building. Nitti put a hand on Capone's shoulder. "Boss, we need to go, now." Capone nodded. They couldn't be found here. Police would have questions that couldn't be answered. Capone stood up, his legs unsteady, and they left the bomb where it was, disarmed but still sitting by the support column. They ran back out of the basement, through the building's lobby, where the elderly woman was now calling the police, and into the street. Within a minute, they were back in the tunnel system, disappearing underground, leaving no trace they had ever been there. The police arrived at 3247 South Halsted at 9:08 p.m., 6 minutes after the bomb was supposed to detonate. They had received a call from a frightened resident reporting men breaking into the building. When police searched the basement, they found the bomb. The bomb squad was called in, and they carefully examined the device. They noted that one of the wires had been cut, cleanly severed, disarming the bomb. They checked the building's residents, trying to find out who had disarmed it. Nobody knew. Nobody had seen anything. The police concluded that maybe one of the bombers had changed his mind and come back to disarm it, though that didn't quite make sense. The official police report stated, "Bomb found in basement, disarmed by unknown person or persons. No suspects identified. Investigation ongoing." The newspapers covered the story the next day, but without much detail. "Bomb found in South Side building," was the headline, with a brief article explaining that police discovered an explosive device that had been disarmed. The article noted that police believed it was connected to gang warfare, but that no arrests had been made. The residents of 3247 South Halsted never knew how close they had come to death. They never knew that a bomb had been seconds from detonating, that their building had been seconds from collapse, that they had been seconds from oblivion, and they never knew that Al Capone had saved them. The truth, why he did it. Years later, Frank Nitti told the story to his personal lawyer, and from that account, we know what happened that night. Nitti described Capone's decision to run into the tunnel, the desperate race against time, the moment Capone cut the wire not knowing if it would work. Nitti said that after they returned to the Lexington Hotel that night, Capone sat in his office for an hour without speaking, just sitting in darkness, processing what had almost happened. 200 people, most of them families with children, had been seconds from death, and a random guess with a pocket knife had saved them. When Nitti asked Capone why he had risked his life, why he had run toward a bomb instead of away from it, Capone's answer was simple. What else was I supposed to do? Let them die? It wasn't about heroism or redemption or public image. It was just that in that moment, when he learned innocent people were about to be killed, the only option was to try to stop it. Even if the odds of success were slim, even if it meant risking his own life, even if nobody would ever know. It was just the right thing to do. The Northside Gang never tried another bombing. The guilt of nearly killing 200 innocent people, and the realization that Capone had saved them, apparently affected them deeply. Tommy O'Brien, the man who made the panicked phone call, left Chicago shortly after and never returned to criminal activity. The other 2 men involved in the bombing also disappeared from the gang life. The incident seemed to have broken something in them, made them realize that their war with Capone had gone too far, that revenge wasn't worth the price. The legacy, 8 seconds today. If you visit 3247 South Halsted Street in Chicago, you'll find the same building still standing, now modernized with new apartments but structurally the same 6-story brick building from 1932. The residents who live there now have no idea that in the basement, 90 years ago, a bomb counted down to 0 while a gangster made a blind guess with a pocket knife. There's no plaque, no memorial, nothing to mark what happened, because officially nothing happened. A bomb was found and disarmed by person or persons unknown. End of story. But the story matters because it reveals something essential about human nature. We want people to be simple, good or evil, hero or villain, savior or destroyer. But people aren't simple. Al Capone was a criminal who hurt many people, who ordered murders, who corrupted a city. But he was also a man who ran toward a bomb to save strangers, who made a 50-50 guess knowing it might kill him, who asked for nothing in return. These truths coexist. Neither cancels the other. He was complicated, contradictory, human. In those 8 seconds between cutting the wire and the bomb's timer reaching 0, the lives of 212 people hung in the balance. 212 people who never knew, never thanked him, never even knew his name was connected to their survival. And maybe that's the purest form of heroism, saving lives with no expectation of recognition, no possibility of reward, nothing but the knowledge that it was the right thing to do. In the final analysis, Capone's legacy is impossible to summarize simply. But on March 17, 1932, for 600 seconds, he was exactly what those 200 people needed him to be, the only person willing to risk everything to save them. And sometimes that's enough.